My wife and I have been married for 18 years. We have our 16-year-old daughter who's been dating a slightly shy and awkward young man for about 3 to 4 months now. He seems very nervous around my daughter and has admitted in passing comments here and there to my wife and I that he can't believe she agreed to date him and that he thinks she's way out of his league. He seems very respectful, just shy. My wife is usually an independent, awesome woman and her ideals align closely with mine, particularly in terms of feminism and equality. We have both striven to raise our daughter to be as independent and capable as possible. Since my daughter has been dating this kid, my wife has changed considerably and has given our daughter advice that has left me with raised eyebrows more than once. Some of the advice that I've heard my wife give out is, oh, it's cute for boys to pay for everything, especially in your first relationship, or, oh honey, don't worry about that, he can pay for you, if he really liked you, he would, and similar. I've tried to balance this out by telling my daughter straight away, 2 people in a partnership should be contributing equally. And my personal favorite, if someone asks if they can take you out for dinner, it's reasonable to expect them to pay, but if someone asks you to grab dinner with them, it's reasonable to split the payment. I figured that would be an easy way for a young person to understand the difference. However, I've noticed my daughter becoming more and more entitled to her boyfriend's money. They haven't been anywhere, obviously, since we're home, but she talks about him like, oh, I'll just ask him to pay for X, which leaves a bad taste in my mouth. She also flippantly bragged and mentioned that she gets him to buy gift cards for her, etc. by mentioning her mother's advice. If you really liked me, you pay for X. I spoke to my wife privately and told her my concerns. She insists it's a rite of passage for girls and it's cute that she should feel this guy completely spoiling her. I told her it's not cute for her to be thinking that it's acceptable to view relationships as personal ATMs. And my wife became very angry with me and is now calling me an asshole with a lot of hostility. Am I the asshole for telling my wife it's not cute for her to encourage our teenage daughter to expect her boyfriend to pay for everything in their relationship? Yesterday, I was supposed to spend the night at my friend's house with some of my classmates and we were playing Truth or Dare. There really is no reason for us to choose truth since we already know a lot about each other, so we mostly just went with dares. It was pretty fun and we had some weird challenges. I was sitting next to my friend's brother when it was my turn and a classmate challenged me to kiss him. His sister immediately told my friend to change the dare and so she did. To be clear, her brother didn't say anything when he heard about the dare and just laughed, so he definitely looked like he was okay with it, right? Well, wrong, because after I kissed him, he told me what the fuck am I doing and he looked like he was really grossed out by it. I was honestly a bit offended and asked him why he was so grossed out by me kissing him. I'm actually a pretty okay looking girl and even if I wasn't, there was no reason for him to act like this. He ended up leaving the game and my friend told me that what I did was wrong on so many levels and to get out of her house. My other classmates didn't say anything, so I think they were on my side, but they didn't want to participate in this argument. I'll ask them when they go back home. Anyway, I did end up leaving. Am I the asshole for kissing my friend's brother without his consent during a truth or dare? I sustained very bad injuries to my face this month. I'm in the stage of healing when the scar tissue has formed, but it's still very tender new skin. I'm going to have very obvious facial scarring for the rest of my life. The injury starts about an inch above my hairline, goes down over my eyebrows, so on that part, hair will not grow. It continues down my cheek where it's the deepest. I'll probably always have an indentation in the fullest part of my cheek. Then it continues to my jawline. In some ways, it's okay. I'm happy it's just cosmetic damage. My friends are super reassuring, telling me how badass and sick it's gonna look. They say I'm still hot as ever, now a little more sexy and mysterious. But in some ways, it really sucks. I know I'm always gonna be seen first as the girl with the scar, and it feels especially bad when people look at me differently. This week, I had to fly home for a family thing. It was a plan I made long before my injury. I wasn't really looking forward to the pity or people making a big deal of it. I'd rather it not be acknowledged. I'd also met with my dermatologist who said I was at the stage of the scar tissue formation that I no longer should be dressing the wounds. The skin was healing and instead I needed to be applying topical cream and Vaseline to keep the site clean and moist. It also looks a bit ugly. The building scar tissue is very red and tender, and with Vaseline over it, looks slick and shiny. So I get on this flight. I have the window seat and I put my headphones on and drift to sleep when the plane is still boarding. I wake up to this kid, maybe 4 years old, sat next to me, throwing a tantrum. I didn't catch the first part of it and I honestly couldn't understand what he was yelling about. His father said to me, "Can you cover that injury?" I said that my dermatologist recommends that I don't, so no, I don't think I will. He started snapping at me saying, "There is no need to be so rude. That injury is graphic and it's scaring my little one." I said, "This is my face. The only damn face that I've got. It sucks being told I'm so ugly that I can't show my goddamn face in public." He started to backtrack saying, "Just until it's healed." And I said, "It'll always be with me. Maybe teach some fucking compassion and respect instead of telling a girl half your damn age what you think about her face. That's rude." He actually got up after and I think he went to the stewardess about a seat change because a young couple came and sat next to me a few minutes afterwards. I've got to admit, I felt so low that I put on my sunglasses and had a quiet cry for a few minutes. Am I the asshole for not covering up my healing scar and for being confrontational about it? Short time about when I messed up by telling a woman on our first date that her pepper spray is useless. So a friend sets me up with this woman because she thought we have similar hobbies and similar dark humor. We met today for the first time over a coffee and tea. We were actually having a good time, or at least I thought so. We clicked right away and had a lot to talk and laugh about. After like an hour, she suggested to pay for our drinks and go somewhere else for lunch and I happily agreed. As we were about to pay for our drinks, she started searching her purse for her wallet and put various objects on the counter because she seemed to have a bit of a mess in her purse. One of these objects was the pepper spray. I casually mentioned after leaving the coffee, "I'd consider getting a different pepper spray if you plan to defend yourself. This one is quite useless." For a bit of context, I used to test various pepper sprays and tear gas in the military. We were stupid and young, but it was also kind of thrilling. And the product she had was by far the weakest and worst we tested. I just recognized the bottle because it was so bad and I thought I should let her know that this is probably not the best option to go with. But she obviously didn't know about that because, well, we just met an hour ago. After this comment, our conversation kind of died and she suddenly had a work emergency that she had to go to. It took me a few minutes until I realized that my comment was beyond creepy without any context. I'm definitely not used to meeting new people. Hopefully I haven't traumatized her. 24, my friend moved in with me after she lost her job about a year ago. We started sleeping together 3 months after she moved in. We're almost in a relationship and we do everything together. She's told me that she loves me, but she's hesitant to define our relationship. So we're basically a couple in everything but the name. Right now, she's visiting her mom. She had texted me that she missed me and she couldn't wait to get back. I texted her back saying, I miss you too, love. Apparently she was on a drive with her mom and she had her phone connected to her car and her mom accidentally had the text read out loud while trying to change the music. She called me up after and she was so furious. She blamed me for it and she sounded so angry. She said her mom was acting weird and said it was all my fault. She said that she's gonna get kicked out from her family because of me. I feel really numb. I really love this girl. She's amazing, but I feel like she just wants us to be in this limbo where she can spend time with me and then go back to dating and marrying a man. She doesn't even want to be my girlfriend. I feel so guilty for what I did. I just want to talk to her, but she's not picking up my calls and is giving me the silent treatment. She's never done anything like this before and I just feel so fucking lost on what I have to do here. Outing her was an accident and I don't know what to do. I have 3 daughters, Alyssa 18, Tessa 16, and Jenna 14. We rarely argue. She drives her sisters around and she works full-time while in school. The only problem is that she can be unreliable. If you ask her to get groceries and be home by 5, she'll call you at 6:30 and ask you what you wanted her to do. And she doesn't do housework without being reminded 5 times. She has ADHD though, so that explains it. Now Jenna loves to argue. Jenna argues with my husband a few times a week. She's a pretty good kid otherwise. She's a straight A student, she plays soccer and is playing softball, and she helps around the house more than both of her sisters combined. Tessa is complicated. When she applies herself, she gets straight A's extremely easy. The problem is, she never does her homework, so she usually gets B's and C's. She and I have similar hobbies and both my husband and I love talking to her when she's in a good mood. We don't fight often, but when we do, it's very dramatic. She's been insisting that she has ADHD or some other problem since she was around 11 because she can't focus, but my husband and I think that she's just trying to get shorter assignments and extra time like Alyssa. We got into an argument the other day because she has IBD and gets infusions every 6 weeks. She's very strict about never pushing it back for any reason after we tried to push it back once because we were going to be in another state and she got sick at 6 weeks and 3 days. It was 2 years ago and she's healthier now, but she still refuses to push it back. Her next infusion is scheduled for the 1st, but we're going to be on vacation from the 30th to the 4th, so I scheduled her infusion for the 8th. Her doctor approved it, but she started yelling at me about how last time I pushed her infusion back, she got sick and she isn't going to risk her health for my vacation. It became a very long and drawn out argument. When I picked her up from school, she put her headphones on so that she wouldn't have to talk to me, and then she locked herself in her room. She borrowed my laptop, so I looked in her backpack to see if she still had it. While I was looking, I saw passes from the school therapist. Tessa knows I don't want her talking to those therapists because people will find any reason to call CPS. Tessa admitted that she'd been seeing the therapist once a week for 2 years. She wouldn't look up at me from her coloring book and started crying and asked me to give it back because her therapist gave it to her for when she was having a bad day. I ended up shredding it and she hasn't left her room except for school and hasn't spoken since, so I wanted to know if I was the asshole. So, am I the asshole for shredding my daughter's coloring book? Storytime about when I let my boyfriend pop a pimple and it almost killed me. I at the time was 23, my boyfriend at the time was 25, had been together for almost a year. I was living at his parents' house because I was between homes and he was living at his cousin's. It was one of those nights where he was staying over and I asked him to pop a pimple on my labia because I couldn't see it and he happily obliged. You know, things you ask and do for your SO. So a couple days go by and the pimple grew exponentially, but I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it would resolve itself. The 3rd day, it grew to the size of a golf ball and my nurse advised hotline for my insurance advised me to go to the ER within the next few hours. Of course, work wouldn't let me go because I wasn't actually dying. Well, so they thought. I went home that night and got help with showering because I couldn't even really lift my legs. My boyfriend takes me to the largest trauma center on the West Coast, and while waiting for the OBGYN, they gave me fentanyl for the pain, and boy, that kept me feeling great for the rest of the night. The OBGYN said that there isn't any need to drain it and to just take antibiotics and it should resolve itself, despite that it's actively oozing, but the hole isn't big enough to ooze. Anyway, I pick up the painkillers and antibiotics and head to bed. He calls out of work just because he wanted to be sure that I was okay. The following morning, he wakes up to go pee and feels me and says that I'm on fire, and he can tell that something is super wrong by just the way that I was talking because my speech and my reaction time is very slowed and slurred. Called the nurse advice line and they said to go to the ER ASAP. I'm spiking a fever, like almost 102 degrees. At this point, I could hardly dress myself, so he's helping me get dressed a little bit and then he takes me to the ER. They're asking me questions and I have almost no idea where I was. I knew my name, but I didn't know my birthday or why I was there. I'm hardly coherent, but not like passing out. Just there, but not. Wheel is spinning, but no one is home. Thankfully, my boyfriend already knows all that information about me and the nurse immediately admits me under the code sepsis. The OBGYN comes down and is like, yep, that needs to be drained. Gives me lidocaine in my naughty bits. I scream absolute bloody murder and she doesn't even give the lidocaine enough time to work and immediately takes the scalpel to my labia and cuts it open. I screamed so loud and squeezed my boyfriend's hand so hard that he told me if he hadn't counter squeezed, his hand would have been broken. They drained it and gave me vancomycin and I feel better. Flagged for admission, but I had just started my job and I couldn't afford to not work, so I went AMA. If you don't know what that means, it means against medical advice. My boyfriend has a bowling league. We go and at the end I start dry heaving and I can't stop. So I'm screaming at my boyfriend to call 911 and I go back to the hospital and I'm admitted. 3 days goes by and my culture came back with an MRSA. It was diagnosed cellulitis with MRSA and sepsis. I spent 6 days in critical care. What didn't click was that he had 2 MRSA infections in his finger, but they drained it and took some antibiotics and he was fine. It took me almost dying for him to get tested to find out that he was a carrier and he was the one who gave me the MRSA.